Satanas! Hail, Satan! Hail, Satan! Hail, Satan!
Greetings, heathens. Welcome to Hail Satan. This is the podcast exploring Satanism, culture, and life in general through the eyes of modern Satanists. My name is Joseph Rose, and I'll be your host today. I'm a member of the Satanic Temple and founder of a little group called Satanic Delco. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most popular topics that I've been asked about since starting this podcast. We're going to talk about the Satanic Temple chapters, friends of groups, and independent groups. People have sent so many messages looking for information and clarity on this topic, so I'm going to try and give some. After the last episode, I got even more questions about it, so this felt like a good time to go ahead and get it out of the way. First, we've got some new patrons on board with us. Before I forget, actually, I recently activated the annual memberships option on the Patreon. So if you're already a member or considering becoming a member, you can now sign up annually and get a 10% discount. Our new patrons, we've got another Samael, Heather, Misha, Ms. Beasley, Kisa, Stephanie, Krav RN91, and Charlie. You guys are the best. Really, thank you so much for supporting what I'm doing here. And if you're on the Patreon, feel free to join us in the Satanic Delco Facebook group. We've always got something going on over there, or like 8 things going on, and we'd love to have you all be a part of it. Speaking of which, we're still collecting items for our Heathens Helping Hounds project. So if you'd like to help a nice animal shelter and therefore help some sweet dogs and cats, please visit the link in the show notes for this episode. If you can't find that, just send me an email or a message of some kind, and I'll point you in the right direction. It's totally optional, of course. If you'd rather just see cute, innocent animals be neglected and left for dead, well, that's your choice after all. We've got some listener mail. Let's get to that. Sean writes in, just writing in to give my appreciation for the care and work you put into the Hail Satan podcast. It has been an invaluable resource as a newcomer to Satanism. My work at sea has taken me across the world and helped open my perspective, having originally come from a violently ultra-conservative Christian background and openly racist butthole of a town. I have always been embarrassed of my upbringing, but after finding Satanism, it truly resonated with me, and I feel I've found the missing piece to my character that I was previously denied. Many thanks, Hail Satan. Thank you, Sean. It sounds like your work at sea and Satanism have both contributed to some improvements in your life and mindset, and that's pretty great, and I'm glad you're digging the show. Gabriel writes, I'm a Brazilian, and although I've known the Satanic Temple for quite a while, I've been holding back coming out as a Satanist for the lack of TST Satanists. Most of them here are LaVeyan. I've searched and couldn't find any group on any social network that I could be a part of, so I've been thinking about creating one myself. Do you have any tips, advice, or ideas on how to start? Gabriel, that's a wild question. Well, I guess it's a wild answer. I'm going to hold off on any direct advice about that right now, but hopefully the rest of this episode will be somewhat helpful in what you're looking into. And our last one is one I've had laying around from Casket. She writes in, I am looking forward to a future episode that discusses TST and what goes into becoming a chapter. I've recently looked into the Portland chapter to quickly discover it is no longer a thing. I'm curious to see what kind of rules there are specifically in handling events, how legal action is handled in between chapters and the headquarters, and so on. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Casket. We're going to get into some of that stuff today for sure. Before we get on with the rest of the episode, our good pal Jerry would like to deliver a word from our wonderful sponsor.
Hello there, this is your pal Jerry the Satanist. I'm here to tell you all about Black Witch. Black Witch is a one-woman handmade business from London, England, specializing in satanic and anti-Christ-inspired rosaries for the delectable heathen. Made with real, semi-precious stones such as black onyx and rose quartz for weight and durability, you will certainly have your rosary for a long time to come. You can find new collections every 2 months, from gold, bold, and heavy to more subtle and delicate pieces for everyday wear. There's a little something for everyone, but custom pieces are available as well. But that's not all. All Hail Satan podcast listeners can get 10% off any orders by entering the code HSP2021. That's HSP 2021 at checkout, which also includes free shipping worldwide. Visit Black Witch to get your discount today. That's BLKWYCH.com.
All right, guys. I'm going to talk about the 3 types of groups you're most likely to run into while searching for some sort of community related to the Satanic Temple. There are 3 primary types of groups. Number 1, an official chapter. Number 2 is a Friends of group, often written as FOG. And third are independent groups like Satanic Delco. First, we're going to get into the official chapters. When you look at the Satanic Temple's website, this is the option that you'll see. When you watch the Hail Satan documentary film, they talk quite a bit about chapters. When someone pops up online and asks, how can I find a group near me? They're generally directed to a page on the Satanic Temple's website where you can put in your town or zip code and it shows you the closest chapter. Depending on where you live, you may get a result or you may not. If your town only has a Friends of group or an independent group of some kind, you won't find out about it there through the Satanic Temple. And this part may seem obvious, but it's worth mentioning that being a member of the Satanic Temple does not in any way include or require you to be a member of a local chapter. That's a completely separate, optional step that people can take if they choose to. So what is a chapter exactly? What is the point of one? There are 2 primary perspectives from which to answer that. One is from the perspective of a person, just like you, who wants to join the chapter or who wants to be a more active Satanist generally. And the other is from the perspective of the Satanic Temple itself. If you're the person that wants to be a more active Satanist based on what you saw in the Hail Satan film or what you've seen in news articles over the last couple of years, then it could be hit or miss for you. For example, if the things in the film that really turned you on are things like the Rick Scott rally or the Pink Mass or some of the other organized protests, and you want to participate in things like that, then you're probably going to be disappointed. The version of the Satanic Temple that was showcased in that film simply does not exist anymore. Lucien Greaves has stated on several occasions that while those things were important in that moment for the Satanic Temple, they would never do anything like that today. And it's been some years since we've seen TST do any of those things. On the other hand, if what you're looking for is a way to meet and interact with other Satanists and potentially take part in some rituals or group events, then you can find that in all of the various types of groups, chapters, friends of groups, or independent groups to varying degrees. A lot of that is dependent upon the individual leaders of a group or chapter and the general personality of that group. Now, let's talk about what a chapter is from the perspective of the Satanic Temple. In order to do that, it's worth discussing what the Satanic Temple actually is. Yes, it's classified as a church or a religious organization by the government for the purpose of tax exemption. And yes, Satanism is a religion, but functionally, as many have stated before, the Satanic Temple is primarily a political activist group. At any given moment, the Satanic Temple is involved in a number of lawsuits. Some, like the cases in Missouri and Texas, are to help expand access to abortions. Some are to place the Baphomet statue or the Veterans Monument in order to make a point about religious equality and the separation of church and state. They've sued the city of Scottsdale, Arizona, so they can give an invocation at a city council meeting. This is all political activism. In order to employ lawyers and be in a constant state of litigation the way TST is, you need money, and you need a whole lot of it. And in order to generate all of this money, you need to have a customer base who is willing to repeatedly purchase your goods and services, or better yet, be willing to donate money directly. They could just put up a website full of mugs and hot sauce and hope for the best, but to achieve better results, they employ the use of the surveillance marketing tools that Facebook and Instagram have to offer, and beyond that, they expand the reach of the organization through chapters. All over the country and all over the world now, they have these satellite groups or chapters that have been trained and given conditional access to branding assets like their logo and use of the name, the Satanic Temple, who are willing to spread the word on behalf of TST and do direct fundraising for them. In fact, to be a chapter, you are required to do fundraising for the Satanic Temple. The benefit of chapters for TST is obvious. The purpose of chapters is simply to grow the organization and therefore grow the amount of money it can collect. And the more money it collects, the more it can do. In fact, in a recent lawsuit that you probably haven't heard about, the Satanic Temple put a dollar amount on members of a Facebook page. I don't want to get too far off track with this part, but it is related. If you get TST's email newsletters, you're kept pretty up to date with most of the lawsuits and any significant steps that are taken in those lawsuits. In fact, Satanic Temple recently emailed us all about what Lucian Greaves called a, quote, media blackout of the recent lawsuit against the state of Texas. He was unhappy with the lack of mainstream press attention that they were getting for that lawsuit, so he called it a media blackout. As it turns out, I've been getting a media blackout for all of my projects for all of my life. But wouldn't you know it, there's another TST lawsuit going on that they've chosen not to include in any of their newsletters or social media platforms. Again, without getting lost in the weeds on this one, the Satanic Temple is suing 4 of their former members for essentially a dispute over the control of a Facebook page. According to the complaint, the Facebook page in question has an audience of more than 17,000 followers. Those followers provide the Satanic Temple with a monetary benefit. Having more followers increases awareness, increasing membership, and increasing donations. Thus, the Satanic Temple pleads that the Facebook page has a cognizable dollar value of nearly $35,000. So, in doing some simple math here, $35,000 divided by 17,000 members comes out to just over $2 per member of the Facebook page. That's what TST says in the complaint. The point is, chapters are designed to increase cash flow to the Satanic Temple. How do I feel about that, you ask? I think it's absolutely fine and acceptable, and it makes total sense. I know some people out there have this idea that an organization like this isn't supposed to raise money or generate an income, and I don't feel that way. I think the executive ministry, as they're called at the top of the Satanic Temple, has priorities and goals, and they can go about raising money and achieving those goals however they want. Not to mention, I happen to align with and support most of those goals in the case of the Satanic Temple. And from the individual Satanist perspective, if you want to be a part of that community while also helping to raise funds for the Satanic Temple, then joining a chapter is a natural choice. Next, let's talk about the FOG, or Friends of groups. Now, these will be a Facebook group that says Friends of the Satanic Temple with a location name put in. For example, Friends of the Satanic Temple, New Jersey, or Friends of the Satanic Temple, Minneapolis, whatever. We talked a bit about the Friends of groups on the last episode with Mike Stewart, but we can get into a bit more detail here. A Friends of group is a chapter in training. The way this works is basically a number of people get together in any given region as a group, and reach out to the Satanic Temple about entering into their official system. If TST sees fit, they accept the group on a trial basis and begin the process that will eventually lead the Friends of Group to official chapter status if they're successful and get approved. That process takes a minimum of 1 year. Among the first things that happen is TST will create a new Facebook group for you and put an administrator in place. Now, no matter what happens from that moment on, TST has the kill switch on that group, just like with a chapter. Whoever started it, it's not yours anymore. If for any reason at all, the Satanic Temple person in charge of it sees fit, that group can simply be deleted. You may wake up one morning and your group is gone. So what about the process to take a Friends of Group to a chapter? Let's talk about that a bit. A member of a local Friends of Group out here shared some internal documents with me, including one called Friends of the Satanic Temple Group Development Process. It is several pages of rules, limitations, guidelines, all about how this process works, and we'll get into it a bit. It says, TST International Council strategically selects the location and placement of these groups based on the international organization's goals, available assets, and needs. Please note that we may not be able to guarantee a group in your area, and we will only support groups we have created internally. It goes on to lay out a list of the minimum requirements for TST chapterhood. It's a long list, so I won't read all of them, but here are some. At least 10 active members who regularly attend social functions. Constant leadership with at least 2 to 3 leaders for at least 1 calendar year, 12 consecutive months. I know at least one local Friends of Group that has broken that rule for sure, but I suspect TST is going to let it slide. Group leaders must work together to create a code of conduct and procedural documentation for the upcoming chapter. Group must present one supportive educational asset to International Council on the Satanic Temple, the Seven Tenets, and or Satanism as it relates to TST. And finally, demonstrated participation in international fundraising campaigns as outlined by International Council throughout the course of the calendar year. Okay. It then goes on to list some operational guidelines. TST International Council is responsible for starting up groups and social media assets for Friends of Groups. Any group or social media asset created outside the purview of International Council will not be recognized by TST and may be subject to copyright claim, aka lawyers. Next up, it lists some Friends of Group allowed events. Primarily, Friends of Groups will be asked to participate in raising campaign funds for the Satanic Temple International fundraisers. You are allowed to share TST donation links on social media. You are allowed to share or promote chapter TST events like Menstruating with Satan. You are allowed to attend Pride and display the TST logo Pride flag. You are allowed to march in Pride as a Friends of Group and fly the TST logo flags. This is an interesting one here. You are allowed a maximum of 1 internationally sponsored donation drive every 12 months, wherein goods will be collected at a social or public gathering and distributed to a charity or organization of the group's choice, but no more than 1 in 12 months. It also goes on to provide a list of disallowed events. Friends of Groups cannot create and maintain a donation collection point or drop box for charity events. Park or beach or any other public area cleanups are not allowed. Friends of Groups cannot donate cash in hand raised at events or socials to local charities. They may not use an Amazon wish list for donations, and any cash donations should be sent directly to the Satanic Temple as part of an official TST International fundraising drive. Friends of groups will not participate in Menstruating with Satan, Lord of the Ties, or other branded TST events. Any form of interview is subject to dismissal of leadership. Only chapters are allowed a media liaison, and only a media liaison may participate in interviews with media. It moves on to a section about becoming a chapter. It states, when your chapter head liaison is confident your FOG has fulfilled their petitioning requirements and is ready to host their benefit event and complete the required educational component, they will alert a member of the International Council who will interview the Friends of Group leaders and select members. Next, it talks about event proposals. Event proposals are a specific form used to prove your Friends of Group is doing its due diligence and due process when handling socials, rituals, educational initiative, other social media assets, holiday events, protests, pride parade, practically everything your FOG will be doing, leading eventually to your qualifying event. Basically, guys, if you want to do anything, and I mean just about anything, you need to write up a proposal, submit it to the Satanic Temple, and wait for them to approve or deny the idea. And from all accounts, there is a huge bottleneck in that process that makes it take far longer than you would expect. I've heard that from quite a few different groups, actually. Finally, it goes on to describe various types of events, what's allowed, what isn't, what kind of rituals you can and can't do for your qualifying event, and it reaffirms that doing any interviews will get you thrown out. In addition, before becoming a chapter, you have to submit to a background check and sign an NDA, which is a non-disclosure agreement. I was also given a copy of this NDA. I won't go over it all, but in part it states, volunteer, that's you, the person signing it, shall not disclose to any person any information regarding or relating to the Satanic Temple, including, without limitation, its organization, operations, policies, procedures, practices, and the identity and contact information for any member, employee, etc. Just as an example, if I signed that NDA, I wouldn't be allowed to say anything that I've said in this episode. All of this talk about what the groups are and how they work is completely off limits. A little while back, I asked some folks within the Satanic Temple about just some of the basics of all this, just for my own understanding even. And I didn't get much in the way of any answers. I asked about any limitations to events or fundraisers, and I was told, quote, there are donation guidelines that I can't get into. I was also told, quote, there are guidelines FOGs must follow. They are not publicly available because they are only need to know by the Friends of Groups and their mentors and International Council. And the same goes for organizers of the Friends of Groups. When I asked if anyone wanted to talk about any of this, even anonymously, I got replies like, no way, it's too risky. If anyone ever found out and it got back to TST, that's an automatic ban. So, if TST's goal was to make people fucking terrified to ever talk about how the Satanic Temple works, they've definitely succeeded at that. The one question I've never been able to get an answer for is why is all of it such a deep, dark secret? Why would it need to be held behind an NDA and threats of being banned? I don't understand it, but that is how it is. Now, let's move on and discuss independent satanic groups. This is one I can speak to with plenty of personal experience. What is an independent group? An independent group like Satanic Delco, and surely some others, adhere to the concept of thyself is thy master. There's no one-size-fits-all rule set for these types of groups, so I'll be primarily describing the way Satanic Delco works because that's the one I'm intimately familiar with. We are simply a group of Satanists. We have a Facebook group just like a chapter or Friends of group does. Most of us are members of the Satanic Temple, and we appreciate and align with the 7 tenets of the Satanic Temple. The simple difference is we're not affiliated with the Satanic Temple or any other groups. Chapters and friends of groups make the deal of getting to use the TST name and logo in exchange for following all of the rules and limitations that I've laid out and then some. We simply choose not to enter into that deal. We don't get to use the name and logo, and we're our own boss, essentially. We've created a pretty unique community that exists online and in person. We use that community in the ways that we see fit. Aside from the active Facebook group where we discuss everything from Satanism to our favorite Capri Sun flavors, we provide a support system for one another. We have weekly Zoom chats that are well populated and pretty lively. We have monthly movie nights. We've done book clubs. We do prize giveaways. We've spawned a separate group for satanic moms and their kids. We've held group rituals. We have a holiday gift exchange. And we've done some charitable things that we're really proud of. We did one for the homeless population of our home county. We did a really great one for a local domestic abuse organization. The Moms Group did a winter coat drive recently. We collected money for our Outsider Achievement Award for a local high school student. And of course, there's the Heathens Helping Hounds Animal Shelter Charity. That's all just from the last 12 months. I'm not exaggerating or throwing shade at all when I say that we have done and continue to do exponentially more than all of the friends of groups surrounding us combined. And there are at least 3 of those groups that I'm aware of. Why is that? There are 2 primary factors that come to mind: leadership and arbitrary authority. By leadership, I mean the personality of the leadership or the general leadership style of any group will go a long way toward defining how that group functions. So if a group leader gets on Zoom with a bad attitude and says, "Okay, guys, I hate Zoom. I know you all hate Zoom and everything sucks. So let's get this over with because TST requires it." Okay. Well, I bet that isn't a group that's going to be enthusiastic or have fun getting to know each other during a pandemic. And in my experience, it can also be a damn near full-time job, and most people simply aren't going to be willing or realistically able to devote all that much time and effort to such a thing. And some people are just going to be a more natural fit for it. It's a matter of chemistry, really, in my opinion. And leaders of any satanic group already have a very unique head start in the fact that they're already leading a very specific minority of people. The common ground has already been established. We're the Satanists. We're the outsiders. We're here for very similar reasons. Earlier, I talked all about how the process works for the other groups. They have an idea or a requirement to meet. They fill out a proposal form, they submit it to the authority figures, wait any length of time to hear back, and then act or not based on what the International Council or Executive Ministry or Chapter Liaison or whoever the fuck says. Compare that to the way a group like ours works. We think, hey guys, there's a pandemic and it's dangerously hot outside and homeless people are really hurting right now. Let's help them out if we can. We put our heads together, come up with a plan amongst ourselves, and we act. Agile and effective. Should we wait 6 weeks for permission to do that? And should it be declined because we already did another charitable thing less than 12 months ago or some other arbitrary limitation? I'm going to read you some words from the Satanic Temple's website. Maybe some of them will be familiar to you. I bet they will be. 1. Every tenet is a guiding principle designed to inspire nobility in action and thought. The spirit of compassion, wisdom, and justice should always prevail over the written or spoken word. 2. The Satanic Temple holds the basic premise that undue suffering is bad and that which reduces suffering is good. And 3, Satan is a symbol of the eternal rebel in opposition to arbitrary authority. Rewind this fucking episode back to where I read all of those limitations and requirements and tell me it doesn't sound an awful lot like arbitrary authority. Think real hard about this scenario. If you were running a Friends of group and you broke the arbitrary rules and did organize a collection to help the homeless people, ask yourself, do you think the Satanic Temple would say, you know, good job. You let the spirit of compassion prevail over our written word in order to reduce suffering, just like we said you should? Or do you think they would drop your ass like a hot rock because you broke the completely arbitrary rules that were created by someone you don't even know? I think we know the answer. And you know, at the start of this, I said there were 2 perspectives to consider. TST's perspective and that of the average Satanist looking to join a group. But there's a third that's worth mentioning. There is the unique perspective of the group leader. In a chapter, they're the chapter heads. In the Friends of group, they're the organizer. And in an independent group, I guess you let the group figure out what they want to call you. And an important, unique factor to consider in all this is ego. We're humans, and we're all subject to the ego on some level. And to be honest, I spent a lot of time thinking about this one. There are some options facing the person who wants to start and lead a group like one of these. On one hand, you get to be a part of this really exciting organization that everybody knows about, the Satanic Temple. You get to have an official title. You're the fucking chapter head. Along with the brand name. Along with that brand name comes bigger numbers and all of the feelings that come with those things. You get to be the big man or woman on campus. And that is absolutely part of the allure of going the official corporate Satan route. It's another part of that trade-off that you make when you weigh it all against the rules and limitations. I can help people, I can be free, I can have hands-on control of my own creation, and I can still benefit TST whenever I want, or I can have the logo and a title. I had to really consider whether or not I was okay with taking a road that would guarantee I would always have a smaller, less impressive amount of people in my group. No official title or recognition from TST, and none of the mainstream Satan street cred to back me up in any way. And after a fairly intense, introspective mushroom trip devoted to thinking about all of it, I was solidified in my choice. So essentially, the spirit of the different groups are all the same from the perspective of the members. In summary, we know that if a potential group goes the route of a Friends of group and eventually a chapter, the focus has to be on benefiting the Satanic Temple headquarters rather than your own community. But if that group remains independent, they get to benefit their own community and also benefit the Satanic Temple all they want. Nothing is stopping anyone in an independent group from donating to TST and buying all of their merch. In case this episode hasn't made it clear by now, I'm the most pro-independent group motherfucker you'll ever meet, and I still donate to the Satanic Temple and buy merch from them on a regular basis. If you go the Friends of group, you can only do one. If you stay independent, you get to do both. And now, dear listeners, I think that's all I have to say on this topic. I am looking forward to diving into some more personal satanic stories and fresh topics and talking to new guests. So please, take a moment, if you will, to visit the website at hailsatanpodcast.com. There are links there to join up with us on the social media platforms. There is a form on there to send me an email, which I strongly encourage you to do. Please send me any feedback on the show or topics that you'd like to see covered. Ask me your questions, tell me to fuck off, whatever you need to do. And there's also a link on there to join our cool Patreon channel where you can get bonus content and link up with all of us over at Satanic Delco. We have the weekly Zooms and all the other fun stuff. So go do all that on HailSatanPodcast.com. Thank you very much for joining me. I'll talk to you real soon. Hail Satan.
He will flee service.